Do a quick mic check, Keith
Hey, Ben.
and David.
Hi, Ben. Hi, Keith. Great to see both of you.
Thank you,
Gentlemen.
David. Good afternoon. Again, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ben Zong, and I'm the Online Communications Manager for the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Partnership. With me today is Keith Malone, our Public Affairs Director, as well as Dave Park, our Industry Affairs Director with the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Partnership. Our webinar today is a general overview of the California Hydrogen Retail Fueling Station Network. Again, general overview. And so if you do have any technical questions or if you're part of the media, please contact us and we can provide for you some more additional information. Today's webinar is being recorded. The recording, as well as the presentation slides, will be posted next week. Once it is posted, we'll send out an email to all registrants where those links are located. During the webinar, everyone is muted. However, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and so please use the GoToWebinar tool to ask questions to the panelists. At the Fuel Cell Partnership, we're a collaboration of industry and government organizations, and we work to bring organizations together to work on hydrogen and fuel cell technology. We have a little bit over 70 members as part of our partnership. And so if your organization is interested in joining, please contact us and we can discuss how we can work together to move hydrogen technology forward. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to Keith Malone. Keith?
So just quickly, on our website, we try to list most of the major hydrogen-related events, especially here in the US and North America. Here are 3 events that are coming up that we just kind of wanted to put on your radar screen. Coming up, you can see the ICEPAG event and World Fuel Cell Conference down at UC Irvine. UC Irvine is one of the leaders, one of the leading universities in the US, if not the world, when it comes to fuel cells and hydrogen. Coming up in February in Long Beach, California, which is in Southern California. For those of you who are outside of California in the US, that's coming up. It's every couple of years. It tends to have a little more of a research focus. It's something I think you should check out. And lastly, we've talked to you before about hosting a Hydrogen Village in California's state capital. We are holding that again coming up in March. Stay tuned. We should have more details in the next month or so to allow you to engage if you happen to be in the state. Let's go to the next slide. And we're going to turn it back over to Ben, I think. Here we go.
Thank you, Keith. And so I'd like to bring to your attention a couple of resources that the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Partnership has available for you. Again, I want to note that on this call, we have a variety of different audiences. And one of our main audiences is our fuel cell vehicle drivers. And so these next resources are primarily geared towards, again, those customers, but also for general public. On our website, we have a few different resources that we have available. The first is our station map. And so that can be found going on to, again, to our website, h2fcp.org/station map. You can also go to it from our main page and click on the station map link there. This map is a dynamic map that allows you to see which stations are currently open, as well as which stations are in development in California. We've recently added in the real-time status for the stations that are currently open and operational. And so those are, again, these stations that says retail open. There's a filter system that allows you to see, again, which stations are open, which ones are in construction and in development, as well as our heavy-duty stations. And so by default, we only show light-duty stations. So again, stations that are for the Mirai, the Nexo, etc. But also we also have our heavy-duty stations that can be viewed by using this filter system here. Next is our resources page. So our resources page is a great resource for any documents that pertains to hydrogen and fuel cell technology. We have, for instance, our hydrogen stations list, which has that we update on a monthly basis, and has all the stations in California, and it lists out when the stations are expected to open.
Ben, I'd also like to add, this is one of our most heavily used resources on the website. We try to put in every document we find that's hydrogen related. So if we've missed something, you're always welcome to email us at the info ad, if you have our direct email addresses, just send it along with a note like, hey, check this out.
Thank you, Keith. Next is our by the numbers page. Again, this can all these can be found under the resources tab. Our by the numbers is a snapshot of where we are with vehicle sales in California, or actually, apologies, in the U.S., as well as station development in California. Again, we also update this on a monthly basis, and so we'll be updating this shortly. And I believe David will be talking a bit more about the specific numbers later on in this webinar. Next is our upcoming events. Our upcoming events, we list all the events that we participate in, as well as any other events that pertains again to hydrogen and fuel cell technology. If there's a certain event that we've missed on here that you feel is pertinent to our audience, please feel free to submit that using the submit an event, and we'll review and add it if it makes sense for our audience. Next is our news page. So this is curated news that primarily Keith Malone, but also the Fuel Cell Partnership staff adds to the page. And so again, if there's any news that you feel is of hydrogen and fuel cell relations, again, please send it to us and we'll add it to this page. And then last, again, this is our station operational status system, or better known as SOS. This can be found on m.h2fcp.org. And this shows in real time when a station is either online or offline. A note that we did recently move to the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Partnership. And so if you do have this bookmarked as cfp.org, it is forwarded to the new website. And so no need to update your links there. This website shows, again, whether a station is online with a green symbol, green circle symbol. If it's in a limited state, it's in a yellow triangle. If it's offline, it's the red square. And then if it's refresh, we have the hourglass. And last, if it's unknown, it's this question mark. Online and offline are pretty straightforward. Limited means that you can get hydrogen, but you won't be able to get a full fill. A refresh means that their main high buffer storage is currently offline or out of hydrogen, and so you won't be able to get hydrogen at that moment, but you may be able to get hydrogen within 10 to 15 minutes. And then the last one is our unknown state. This means that we lost data connectivity with the station. So oftentimes we do see stations run out or have power outages or have some other issues with their computer that transmits data to the system. If we lose connectivity, we usually alert the station developer, and they get that notification as well, and then they just have to reboot the system usually. On the site as well, the station developers and operators, they have direct access to be able to add notes to these stations. And so, for instance, Anaheim here, if you see an information icon here, if you click on it, it'll give you a little more information about what's happening there. And so usually information that pops up on that this box here is if they're expecting the station to be offline, if it is already offline, if there's other important information, and they'll add it to this box. Usually there's a timestamp up here, and usually there's again, they try to provide as much information as possible. We see stations go offline for a number of reasons, primarily for mechanical issues. So that typically is, having the compressor have issues. We've seen the point of sale fail. There's also been dispenser issues. We've seen customers come in and drop the nozzle, which will cause the station to go offline. So again, a number of issues that can cause the station to go offline. In the past, we've seen supply issues, not so much recently. Within the last, I would say 6 to 9 months, supply has been much better. And again, Dave will talk a little more about this. If there are any of those issues, again, station developers will typically put that information on this box here. More information on this page. There's usually, if the station has both H35 and H70, that both of those pressures will be shown on this page, as well as the inventory. And so the inventory that's the total amount of hydrogen that's available at that site. Again, the high storage buffer, sometimes that might run out before the inventory runs out. And so that's where a station would go into a refresh state. Also, with SOS, you can also sign up for an account, and with an account, you can be notified in real time whether a station's online or offline. If you only care about H70, you can also click for just H70, and if you only care about online and offline, you can select those as well. You have the opportunity to sign up for text messages or notification through email. And personally, myself, I only sign up for emails. There can be some changes quite drastically from time to time, and so having it on a text notification can be overbearing sometimes. So as a note, I highly suggest folks to sign up for email notifications. Also, as a note, we do transmit the SOS data to a number of third parties. So for instance, the Toyota Intune app, Honda Link app, the My Hyundai app. We also have Hygo, which is a third-party app that uses data from SOS. And so again, you're welcome to use any of those apps. However, the SOS site is most real time, and so I encourage you to use whichever system is most comfortable to you. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it to Dave.
All right, thank you, Ben. As Ben mentioned, on our By the Numbers page, we do publish the current status of vehicles in the U.S. and hydrogen stations in the U.S. Of course, that market exists only here in California, so all these numbers are specific to California at this time. In the last quarter, we saw a modest increase in fuel cell electric vehicle sales. We're up to 14,435 vehicles. And you'll notice that our station numbers, right now we're at 56 stations available. That number does fluctuate as stations, some of the older stations have been closing for a variety of reasons. I'll get to some of the specifics in a few slides, but we are up to 56 stations. Hopefully we'll be at 57 shortly. Next slide, please. So as you can see, this is a chart that we pull from our partner organization and member GoBiz. It's a graphical representation of the hydrogen fueling network in California. You can see that there are step functions to this graph, and that is each of those step functions is related to a grant fund offering by the California Energy Commission. You can see in Q3 2022, we had 57 stations. Now it's dropped down to 56 stations that are open. There are 5 stations that are unavailable. On the next slide, we'll identify which stations those are. But then we have 33 stations in active development and 12 stations that are proposed. You might have noticed on the previous slide, there are about 70 development projects that have been funded. We have yet to see a location identified with those funded projects. So in terms of the total number of development projects, proposed, available, in construction, and then funded, there are about 170 retail stations that are in the pipeline. Next slide, please. In terms of the current network, our latest stations to open are at Seal Beach, and then we had one station, San Francisco Mission Street, that has reopened. It was offline for a little while, but they have brought that station back online. We have 5 stations that are in some form of commissioning. So those 5, Anaheim, Pasadena, San Diego, which is in Mission Center, Santa Ana, and Woodside. Those stations are in the pipeline to open, in the next 4 to 6 months. They do need to be tested by the state and verified by the automakers that they meet the fueling protocols, and then they'll come online. We did have several stations that are unavailable. The latest station to be unavailable is our legacy station at Cal State LA. For those of you who frequent that station, you might be aware it's one of the oldest stations in the network. An interesting fact about that station is it has on-site electrolysis. They actually produce their own hydrogen on site and dispense it into vehicles. Unfortunately, their electrolyzer went down. They're currently working on repairing that electrolyzer to bring that station back online. But because of that, the station is not available. Also, LAX, Mountain View, Ontario, Palo Alto, and San Francisco Harrison Street stations, those continue to be unavailable. As Ben mentioned, we are seeing station improvements. The last major there were several improvements system-wide, but the major improvement in 2022 was an improvement in supply chain. So if you'll recall, the past 3 or 4 years have been quite a roller coaster in terms of hydrogen, retail hydrogen availability. One of the major issues was the availability of hydrogen. There were either weather disruptions that disrupted the flow of hydrogen into California, and also the trucking network, the delivery network, that has run into some bumps in the road, but we have new midstream delivery companies entering the marketplace. And we have more local production and distribution to California, which has all improved the availability of hydrogen and the delivery of hydrogen to stations. So right now, the major issues around hydrogen availability is station resiliency. We're still seeing mechanical failures, and that is in part due to the fact that we have a limited number of stations and a growing network of vehicles. And so the stations are very much, pushed to their limit. And as you can imagine, dispensing a very high pressure gas 24/7 can be quite taxing on the equipment at the stations. And so that is the cause of frequent mechanical failures. The owner and operator of the stations have improved the availability of parts. In some cases, they're fabricating their own parts, and they have improved their staffing on the maintenance side, and then on staffing of call centers. But that's not to say that customer experience is a major focus of the partnership. Moving forward, we will start to work with our members to work towards improving the customer experience, and hopefully in the next few webinars we'll be able to report back what some of those customer experience improvements are. One of the things that we really do need to discuss here is the price of hydrogen. You may have seen that the pump price of hydrogen has gone up significantly in the past few months, in the past 6 months. We're now, hovering somewhere in the $22 to $26 a kilogram price range at the stations. There are two major factors that are impacting the price of hydrogen. The first is the actual cost of hydrogen due to inflationary pressure and supply chain issues across the board. We've seen price increases everywhere, including conventional fuels, gasoline and diesel, and then in the grocery stores around food, and pretty much every product across the economy. Hydrogen is no different. It is a product, and the cost of doing business has increased, and therefore the price of hydrogen has increased. But then there is a second factor that has affected the price of hydrogen, and that's a program that's run by the California Air Resources Board, who is a member of the partnership. But that program is the Low Carbon Fuel Standard program. Within the Low Carbon Fuel Standard program, there is a provision called the HRI, Hydrogen Refueling Infrastructure Credit. And that credit is fungible between all types of fuels within the LCFS program. But the station developers were relying heavily on the value of those credits to make up for pricing. That LCFS credit value was included in the balance sheets for the station developers, but we've seen that credit value plummet 60% or more over the last year, and therefore the station developers suddenly found that a $200 credit that they held before is now worth $80 or even less than $80. So they've had to make up for that depression in credit value at the pump. Unfortunately, we don't see this. We don't see LCFS, the market value, changing much in the next year. So unfortunately, the price of hydrogen will likely be elevated for the foreseeable year. So with that, I think that I will close out this slide and then move on to the next. So regarding the station network, one of the more exciting things that we've seen was the California Energy Commission has published a new grant fund offering. It's GFO 22607. It is a grant fund offering focused on light duty fueling, but there is a multi-use component for medium and heavy duty vehicles as well. What is being offered is $27 million to continue to grow the retail fueling network in California. Assembly Bill 8 calls for Assembly Bill 8, and then two governor's executive orders call for 200 hydrogen fueling stations in California. These funds are intended to meet those combined goals. So with this funding, we are looking forward to reaching a 200 station milestone in California. The developmental timeline to get those 200 stations on the ground is 2025. One of the interesting things about this funding proposal is it's designed to fund stations where there are no stations in California primarily, which is destination and connector stations. And so if you look at the isopleths that are displayed in the map on the screen, those are the developmental areas that CEC is looking to bring hydrogen fueling into the state. If you go to the link that's shown, you can just Google GFO 22607 and it'll likely bring you to the page, but there is a detailed map that you click to that has this map, but down to the city level jurisdiction, so you can see exactly which areas CEC is looking to fund fueling stations. And I think that, oh, actually, next slide, please. Another very interesting development that happened just in the month of November is the California Air Resources Board published their 2022 scoping plan for achieving carbon neutrality. And this is an update to their scoping plan, but it calls for a reduction in anthropogenic carbon emissions of 85% below 1990 levels, and the milestone year to reach that is 2045. And the plan itself calls for an aggressive reduction of fossil fuels wherever they're used, and it calls for clamping down on heat, traffic, chemical, and refrigerants that impact climate change, a reduction in reliance on cars for personal transportation. So it encourages a shift towards walking, biking, and public transit for local trips. It calls for vehicle electrification, and then an improvement in the natural and working lands as carbon sinks. What this all translates to is ARB models it required 94% decline in liquid petroleum usage and an 80% reduction in fossil fuels overall. Specific to hydrogen, ARB indicated that the state will need 1,700 times more hydrogen than what is currently being used in the state. And included in hydrogen production is bio-derived hydrogen, as well as electrolytic hydrogen, but bio-derived hydrogen, which would be derived from things like dairy digesters, woody biomass, and landfills. It also calls for infrastructure to support electrified transportation, which is in line with the mobile source strategy that calls for 100% ZEV sales, I believe, by 2035 in the light duty sector. And then there are several advanced truck efforts going on at ARB to address the heavy duty fleet. And then it also calls for renewable hydrogen to be implemented across the energy ecosystem. So not just transportation, but places like long duration energy storage, and then even prime power production. One of the things that the partnership stands behind very strongly is we work towards virtuous cycles of economic development. So therefore, the bringing of private investment into the hydrogen space so that the hydrogen economy is a self-sufficient economic market, and certainly the Scoping Plan does promote private investment in the ZEV transition. So at the end of this presentation, we will present some links, and we have the link posted for the Scoping Plan. And with that, I will hand it over to Keith to talk about some of the vehicle-specific topics.
Thank you, Dave. And to build off of what Dave was saying, again, this scoping plan is another market signal coming out of the state of California. We've talked about some of these other ones before, such as the CARB's 2020 mobile source strategy, which really foresees fuel cell vehicles playing a role in all vehicle categories, including the light duty realm, which is I'm just about to talk about. And as well as we've told you before a number of times, the CARB self-sufficiency study on the light duty fueling network. So with this scoping plan, lots of really good market signals and indicators that California really recognizes the role that hydrogen will need to play as we decarbonize our economy. Speaking of light duty and what potentially will be a damn nice car to drive in. Some of you may have recently noticed the LA Auto Show that Hyperion, which we've mentioned before in previous webinars, really unveiled their XP1 vehicle. They also unveiled their Hyperfuel mobile station. And this mobile station is really unique. It's bringing in, it not only will fuel cell vehicles, but it has the ability to charge battery electric vehicles. And so this really is showing, as we've known for a while, the role that hydrogen is going to play, not only for fuel cell electric vehicles, but battery electrics. I think we've talked about it in previous webinars of folks that are using, for example, GM has been using their own fuel cells plus hydrogen to recharge their battery electric vehicles during test drives with news media. So, and there are others that are working on a similar sort of method. Remember, when we talk about hydrogen, a lot of people will use kind of the efficiency argument to criticize fuel cell electric vehicles and hydrogen in general, but hydrogen, there are also other criteria that are important, including resiliency. And so hydrogen is going to be playing this really interesting role I think, down the road. So again, we've got this really sexy car. We've also been talking about Hopium and their Machina a car that they unveiled at the French, the Paris Auto Show a couple of months back. So kind of the hot vehicle categories and the racing car category is really starting to step up. So let's go to the next slide. As part of this, and I think the slides may be slightly out of order, I apologize. I'm going to talk about the Honda, their announcement in just a second. But vehicles around the world, if you look at what's going on in Europe, we're seeing a lot of taxi fleets that are using fuel cell cars. And to the right is the list that I've been sort of building slowly. I could be off. There could be a few more that we've missed. We have one vehicle kind of ride sharing program here in Southern California by Stratus Fuels. They call it Stratus Share. They're mostly focused in what we call the Inland Empire here in California and Orange County. We hope to see it expand over the next few years. Right now, they've got 12 cars. They'll have about 16 next year. In these other sorts of, and what kind of triggered this slide is the fact that just recently, actually in the last few days, a new taxi service in Berlin is going to be taking on 200 Toyota Mirais. So lots of really good indicators about the cars and also how they perform in fleets and their value in these larger fleets. So down the road, we hope to be able to share more with you, but this should give you, for those of you who like to dig deep, give you some data or some opportunities to go and look and see what's happening with them. Can I see the next slide, please? Thanks, Ben. Like I said, Honda came out with an announcement yesterday morning. We were really excited to see this announcement. As you know, they have concluded production of the Honda Clarity, both the fuel cell and the plug-in hybrid vehicle. That plug-in hybrid vehicle is very, a lot of people have adopted that vehicle. A lot of people are still driving their Honda Clarity vehicles, including me here in Los Angeles. They indicated they're going to begin, as you can see, production in 2024. You will note that I'm not including a photo of the vehicle because they did not release a photo of the vehicle. Certainly, you can find online photos of earlier generations of the Honda CR-V. This one, when they made the announcement, they shared pretty much what's under the hood. And remember, this is the fuel cell that they are building. They are manufacturing with GM out in the Midwest in Ohio. And I will also note they're going to be building this, this plug-in fuel cell vehicle. Yes, it's a plug-in fuel cell vehicle. They're going to be building it in Ohio. And I will note from the last two slides, Hyperion, they're going to be building their vehicles in Ohio as well. So it's really kind of interesting to see what's going on in the Midwest there. The plug-in feature is really meant for, you know, you're going to be able to plug in, drive using that battery for more local driving and using the fuel cell version for longer trips. So it becomes, we started to see that with Daimler, Mercedes-Benz a couple of years ago, although they didn't come out with the vehicle for a commercial product. They did introduce it for a short time, but it's really great to see Honda stepping up and bringing this kind of vehicle to market and knowing that it's going to be manufactured here in the US. So let's go to the next slide. So as we start to look at other vehicle categories, as always, we like to talk about what's going on with fuel cell electric buses. I often like to say they are the canaries in the coal mine because so many are on the road. We've had a lot of experience with them here in California, as well as in Ohio. They really are showing the benefits of this technology for fleets. They're showing both the benefits and some of the challenges that are coming forward. Just recently, we saw Golden Empire Transit, which is out of Bakersfield, which is in California's Central Valley. They did a ribbon cutting for their hydrogen fueling station that was built by First Element Fuel, one of our members. We just had an announcement out of New York City. Their MTA is taking on a few fuel cell buses. So we're now beginning to see major metropolitan areas begin to adopt fuel cell technology for transit. Here in Los Angeles County, we've already talked about the fact that Foothill Transit, which is based here in the greater Los Angeles area, they're taking on 33 fuel cell buses. They've already, a couple of the buses are now already on the road here. So, so we're really excited to see kind of what's going on, not only here in California, but really across the country. Also, the California Air Resources Board just released a census of fuel cell bus deployment here in California, not only what is on the road in the purchase pipeline, but also what's planned. And as you can see, I've added a little note that at the moment for the transit agencies that have already reported to CARB, and not all these agencies have reported yet. There are still some that are going to be filing their rollout plans. But to date, we know that another 2,100 buses are planned here for the Golden State. And I suspect we're going to see more, especially as the prices of fuel cell buses come down over the next couple of years. They've already been coming down quite a bit. But I suspect as we start to see larger rollouts, we're going to see cost reductions in a lot of different sorts of aspects of these fleet rollouts. If we can go to the next slide, please. So heavy duty trucks, I just wanted to point out, we've got 7 members that are focused on heavy duty trucks. Cummins Cellcentric, which is a joint venture of Daimler and Volvo, Daimler Truck North America, Hyundai, Hyzon, Nikola Motor, and Toyota. Looks like I didn't exactly put those in alphabetical order like I intended. My apologies, everyone. Just some really interesting announcements that have come up. Hyundai announced they've accumulated about 5 million kilometers in with 47 of their trucks in Switzerland. So again, some really good indicators about fleets. Again, fleets, light duty and heavy duty. At the same time, Toyota and others, they call it the Zanzef project. Remember, they rolled out 10 fuel cell trucks from Kenworth, powered by Toyota fuel cells. That project has concluded. It doesn't mean that the trucks are no longer on the road. It just means the project itself is concluded. We certainly, like all of these items that we are sharing with you, there are links to them either in our news stories or in the resources database. And again, I want to point out that we are continuing to evolve a national hydrogen mobility strategy that looks at heavy duty trucking as a means of connecting ports, connecting the future hydrogen hubs, and other activities across the country. And as more comes of it, as we talk with stakeholders across the country, we'll be bringing more to you in these quarterly updates that we have. And can we go to the next slide? So I'm now going to get into kind of the geographic sort of touch points that we always have, where we focus a little bit on California, then national, and then global. I wanted to kind of point out here in California, in our Central Valley, there's been a lot of activity recently. As we talk about hydrogen hubs, over time, we're going to probably need to have more specific language to kind of distinguish between DOE-funded hubs, between hubs that have sort of naturally evolved, as well as kind of what might be mini clubs or clusters, as some people are calling them. So in the Central Valley, just over the last year or less, we've seen a lot of interesting activity. Some of these we've already shared with you in the lower right-hand corner. We've talked about Ford and their project with SoCal Gas. They're going to be testing a Ford 550 Super Duty truck for utility work. So that's going to be a great project to look at. Just recently, Fusion Fuel and Electus Energy announced a really big green hydrogen production project, and we're going to see more in the Central Valley, and especially in the Bakersfield area. Nearby, we have a nonprofit called Valley Can. They've been working on vehicle replacements, kind of taking older cars and replacing them with cleaner vehicles, whether they are hybrids, battery electrics, and in this case, fuel cell electrics. So it's really exciting to see these vehicles getting into the hands of communities that may have a little more challenges to really accessing clean vehicles and technology. And then I want to conclude with this page that Kern Community College District got $50 million in funding for the California Renewable Energy Laboratory. So all the indicators are that hydrogen is going to be part of that program, part of the laboratory. So we're really excited to see what comes out of that, because there's a lot. I mean, then this is only part of what's going on there. And there's some things that we're not privy to yet, but we do hear kind of the quiet chatter. So keep an eye on California's Central Valley. And also I want to point out there's reason to keep an eye on it, because remember, a lot of funding here in California, and remember at the US level, the Justice 40, that we really want to be focusing a lot of clean energy development, and especially hydrogen, in underserved communities, disadvantaged communities, and the Central Valley is really a hot spot here in California. So don't be surprised as we begin to see more. Oh, and I also forgot to include, remember, Plug, formerly Plug Power, they've got that project they're working on, solar to hydrogen project in Fresno County. So a lot's happening there. Keep an eye on it. Next slide, please. And if I seem to be looking away, folks, just remember my colleagues at the partnership are sending me information. Don't forget this, Keith. Don't forget that. Again, there's so much to remember, and I know all of us are trying to keep an eye on what's happening. So as we've said before, you've heard me mention the Hydrogen Hub activities that are going on here and around the country. The partnership, our members, both government and private industry, have instructed us to help these Hydrogen Hub efforts wherever we can, whether it's California, whether it's the Pacific Northwest, Texas, or the Northeast. So we're really kind of evolving our ability to work with them and see where we can help tie them together, keep them talking, or find, where we can really provide a strong service to all of them. But a couple things to keep an eye on. Over on the right, California, we launched the Hydrogen Hub effort in early October. A number of stakeholders down in Long Beach, they're at the headquarters for the Long Beach port, came together. In the background, we had a number of heavy-duty trucks and others as this visual background. So it was really exciting to kick it off. It was followed by a day of discussions among stakeholders in California about how do we move forward with our Hydrogen Hub efforts. To the left, you can see some other activities going on. Just this morning, Nikola Motor reported that they have been invited into the phase two of the U.S. Department of Energy's loan application project, $1.3 billion. So we may see what might be described as another Hydrogen Hub activity, but that may not be directly tied into an official DOE-funded Hydrogen Hub effort. But given what we're seeing in California and Texas, don't be surprised as these all begin to link up over time. New Mexico is always lots of activity. It seems like going on down there. Their governor's been very supportive. And in the lower left, Texas launched its Hydrogen Hub effort, and they're calling it High Velocity. So lots of interesting creative names that are being created for all these hydrogen activities, as we know. So let's go on to the next slide. And then from a global perspective, you know, the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, included a lot of things, including a hydrogen production tax credit, but it also included some interesting incentives for producing electric vehicles, battery and fuel cell here in the US. It has, the Europeans are a little concerned about it, so I think you're going to find some interesting discussions going on. You remember I've also included from way back in June when President Biden also invoked the Defense Production Act to accelerate clean energy here in the US. Hydrogen was part of that. I'm also including a quote to the very right about the Europeans reacting. I've shared this one before, but it's important to note the passage of the IRA, in addition to the hydrogen hub activity, has really set things off globally. We are now a global leader in hydrogen. And below, there was an interesting interview recently with the Center for Strategic and International Studies talking about the geopolitics of hydrogen. Remember, a couple of years ago, you started to see countries start to position themselves. Now we've been seeing more and more industry starting to position themselves. And now we're beginning to see some real interesting geopolitics and the potential for hydrogen to kind of realign relationships, especially when it comes to energy. Wow, that's a lot to kind of take in. And remember, I'm only showing you like a spritzer of what's going on. I know a lot of you are tracking. I'm just trying at this point to kind of connect them all together for you. Let's go to the next slide. And I want to get us to, and again, here are some of the resources related to some of the items that we've mentioned. Again, there's a lot on the our website that you can find based on that. And so with that, I'm going to conclude my portion of the webinar. Ben, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I'm sure there's a lot of questions, as always. We're going to try and answer as many of them as we can. Some we may not, and some we may answer offline with some of you individually. So.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Dave. And so we do have quite a bit of questions that came in, and with 10 minutes, we probably won't be able to get to all of them, but I want to cover some of the general questions first, especially an important one: can truck stations service hydrogen cars too? Dave, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. The truck stations are not meant to provide fuel to light-duty vehicles. The truck space is currently, it is evolving now. There are 3 active truck stations in California, and they're all in the port of LA, Long Beach areas. And those are specific to trucks, not the bus stations. And those trucks are, they're in the demonstration phase. You know, that Zanzef project that Keith alluded to, you know, out of the ports of LA and Long Beach. Those are demonstrations. They're limited vehicle demonstrations. All those vehicles are, you know, prototype demonstration vehicles that are in real use service, hauling cargo in the LA region, but the stations are purpose built for those vehicles.
Thanks, Dave.
Ben, maybe I can jump in, and I know I saw several questions regarding mobile fueling. Maybe I can address that. The first one was related to mobile fueling and use of hydrogen in off-road equipment. Right now, what we're seeing, and Ben, maybe you can address some of this, but we're seeing some port equipment, which is, you know, off-road equipment, not registered for roadway use. Those vehicles are being fueled by mobile refuelers, but again, they're in that demonstration phase. So these are very specialized vehicles. Right now, the market is feeling out how would we integrate hydrogen and fuel cells into off-road applications, such as at the ports and cargo handling equipment. So we're not quite certain what the timeline is for widespread use of hydrogen in off-road mobile sources, but we are seeing that technology evolve. I saw also some questions about mobile refueling in the retail automotive fleet. We are investigating the use of mobile refuelers in areas that might have, frequent outages of stations, and one of them that was brought up in the chat or in the Q&A is Sacramento. Sacramento specifically is a challenging area, and I'll get to that in a second. But there's several factors, regarding use of mobile refuelers. One of the easier ones is just the permitting of a space to where a mobile refueler could park and be put into service. But then the question that arises is these mobile refuelers, they're not like a standalone retail hydrogen station. The equipment is a lot more delicate. It requires a person who's trained to use that mobile refueler. It's not something that a customer could pull up to and use the nozzle. The hydrogen is not dispensed the same way that it's dispensed at a at a freestanding retail location. And so there are challenges regarding staffing of the refueler. How many vehicles can that refueler service, in an hour, in a day? And so these are all conversations that we're having among our members. We are focused on trying to improve customer experience, but there are technical hurdles that would have to be overcome. Jumping into the Sacramento region, that region has been 3 active stations in Sacramento. And when one station goes down, it means the other 2 stations are burdened even more so than they already are. And so we've seen recurring fueling challenges in Sacramento. We have 2 stations that are in development in the area. We're hopeful that more stations will be brought. As I mentioned, there are 70 funding pots for 70 development projects that have not yet found homes. We are talking to our station developer members about developing in Sacramento because there is the need. But right now, unfortunately, until those, those 2 development projects, until they're commissioned, which will likely not be for at least a year, we're going to continue to see, recurring issues in Sacramento when stations do go down. I wish I had better news. It's an unfortunate reality in Sacramento.
Dave, I also wanted to add, when I was talking about Hyperion and their Hyperfuel station, that is intended to be mobile stations. So we're really excited to see what will come out of that. They are hoping to, as I recall from their official statement, to have those start rolling out sometime next year.
I would look forward to seeing that. Thank you for sharing.
We all would.
Dave, earlier while you were talking about the supply shortages, a question came in. So is there no longer any hydrogen supply shortages or all offline dispensers due to mechanical failures?
We are seeing regular deliveries of hydrogen in the retail stations. Some of there are a variety of solutions that are being implemented by we have 3 major station operators. That would be Iwatani Corporation of America, Shell, and First Element Fuel. They all have their own methods and relationships with hydrogen fuel suppliers, so it's not ubiquitous. What I'm saying is not ubiquitous, but generally what we're seeing is we're seeing the supply of hydrogen has improved significantly. The truck fleets, the trailers that deliver gaseous hydrogen and liquid hydrogen, there's more diversity in companies that can actually haul the hydrogen, and then there is more diversity in the hydrogen coming into the state from we have now 3 major suppliers of hydrogen. Linde, Air Liquide, and Air Products. So that redundancy in terms of suppliers has also improved. But again, the individual station developers have relationships with their suppliers, and so depending on which supplier they have a relationship with, it might affect the availability of hydrogen, but generally we're seeing an overall improvement in the market.
Dave, can you address the causes for the LCFS credit value drop?
So the major issue is renewable diesel has flooded the LCFS market. Renewable diesel is a form of diesel fuel that's a drop-in for regular diesel. It's not biodiesel. It is a fuel that is derived from biological resources or renewable resources, but it is chemically identical to diesel fuel. So you can put renewable diesel in any truck and it reduces the carbon impact of that vehicle. Because of the ease of implementation, renewable diesel has flooded the marketplace, where fleets are there is a big need for renewable fuels, which is a good thing, but no one was anticipating this volume of fuel, of low carbon fuel, coming into the LCFS program. And therefore, when this all this renewable diesel started being implemented and LCFS credits generated because of that fuel, that's what caused the depression. What's interesting is on the renewable, it's the problem of a depressed LCFS credit is affecting all fuel markets, including the renewable diesel markets, because all these companies had the LCFS credit at a $200 value written into their business plans, and now and they had not anticipated such a drastic drop in credit value.
Thanks, Dave. Next question, can you talk about the process of commissioning a station, and in particular, what can be done to improve the speed of commissioning a station?
Currently, the entity that commissions stations is the California Air Resources Board. They have a device called HiStep that they bring to the stations, and they test the stations for a variety of fueling protocol, permissives, such as the rate at which a station can fuel vehicles back to back in an hour. I believe the Energy Commission in the grant proposals, they require 7 back-to-back fills per hour. So they verify that the station can meet that level of demand. But then there's something called the fueling corridor, which is, hydrogen is dispensed at high pressure. And so the fuel has to flow within a certain pressure corridor, meaning you can't go above or below the specified range. So that device tests, the rate at which hydrogen is dispensed from the station into the vehicle. And there are safety concerns around that. So I mean, that's just a couple of the things that the device tests for. The bottleneck is, yes, there's only one HiStep device. There is another one or several that have been commissioned to be built and deployed in the state. And then what we would look towards is for the commissioning process to be privatized, and so for a third-party entity to come into the market, or third-party entities to come into the market to start to commission stations, where the process of commissioning stations is not so hands-on. And I know certainly the automakers, they don't want to be in the business of validating stations, every station that comes online. So the more we work towards these third-party validators, the faster commissioning will occur. There is at least one, probably more parties that are interested in entering the commissioning marketplace as as a private entity.
And Dave, I think that also explains sometimes we'll get drivers who go by stations that have yet to open and they look ready to go. And there's sometimes a little frustration in trying to explain to them commissioning, and there's things that that are happening that you may not be aware of.
Correct.
And so I think we'll do one more question before we have closing statements. Keith, maybe this might be for you. How do we, or how can we support necessary or appropriate legislation, and do you track that information? Does the partnership information?
So the partnership, we are a nonprofit. We do not lobby at all. We do not, with policymakers of any kind, bureaucratic, appointed, elected, we do not tell them, we do not instruct them, but we are allowed to educate the hell out of them. So on the policy side of the equation, we tend to be a little more observant than kind of there in the thick of everything. But that said, I can tell you what you can do to help out. Talk to your policymakers, council members, county supervisors, and I'm assuming you're here in California, so I may be using some political terms that may not be appropriate for other states, but your local elected officials, your state elected officials, your federal representatives, and you don't have to be an expert. You just use your words. To use a preschool phrase, hydrogen and fuel cell. And they need to hear that. And the more they hear that, the more they know that there are people in their districts. Remember, talk to the folks that represent you. That's the greatest impact you can give. It's okay to talk with other ones, but especially the ones who represent you, and talk about why you want to see more stations, why you want to see more fuel cell vehicles or buses or trucks or whatnot. You don't have to be an expert. Your legislators aren't expecting that from you. And you don't have to give them a lengthy dialogue. And Dave, it looks like you want to say something too.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I know we're running out of time, but I think that is really the best tool that you can use. If there's a station, honestly, if there's a station that you think could improve, talk to your legislator, right? If you want more coverage in your region, talk to your legislator. They need to hear that. They need to hear that there is this need. Otherwise, there's no better person to advocate for you within the state of California.
Because sometimes when we show up, or the lobbyists show up, when we show up to educate and they have no one in their district mentioning it, it's nice to be able to go in there like, we have a lot of constituents who are really interested. Like folks out there, a lot of you want to see a San Luis Obispo station. Now with that recent GFO that Dave mentioned, could be a possibility because it's mapped in there. But it also helps to point those things out. We get a lot of people wanting a Palm Springs station. I think, I feel really good about seeing one soon in the near future. But that said, if you want those stations, you got to ask for it.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Dave. And so any closing thoughts before we end the webinar, Keith?
I hope everyone has a happy holiday and a happy new year. And just so you know, in my head, every H I say has a little 2 mark down below, H2. Get it? Sorry. Bad hydrogen humor. I apologize.
And Dave, any additional thoughts?
Yeah. Thanks everyone for attending, and feel free to reach out to us. Our email addresses are listed there, and certainly we'd be happy to engage with all you all.
Again, thank you all for joining our webinar. Again, next week, likely we'll have the recording as well as the presentation slides posted. And again, an email will be sent out to all of you with where those resources are located. Thank you, and again, have a happy holiday and happy new year.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.